Whether you're a private tutor online or in person, thinking of starting out or already earning money, you can always improve your craft. I'm Will from Enchanted ESL, and these are 10 tips for becoming a better EFL/ESL tutor. I've been a private English tutor since 2016, and it's now my full-time job. Along the way, I've had some brilliant students, done some amazing classes, and I've made a few mistakes as well. This video is a distillation of all that experience. The first 5 tips are about the business and logistical side of tutoring, getting paid, finding students, that kind of thing, and the second 5 are about the classes themselves and how to make them amazing. Tip number 1, find your niche and own it. Figuring out what kind of classes you want to give and what the customer base needs is the key to earning good money and having a really fulfilling experience. There are a few main types of private class that you might want to think about. First is teaching young kids who are just beginning to learn the language, so this is going to be lots of games and songs and silliness and fun. The second is kids and early teens who are developing their abilities, so this is going to be really dynamic with games and mysteries and puzzles and lots of conversation. The third is older teens and adults who are focusing on an exam, their academic studies, or for work. You're going to be doing more vocabulary and grammar, and the classes are going to be calmer and more rigorous. The fourth type is with the same age group, older teens and adults, but it's a conversation-based class. They don't really want to study hard, they just want to practice getting fluency. The fifth is corporate classes, where you work at developing employees' communication skills. This is typical of international businesses. Each class type has its advantages and disadvantages, and a lot of that will be unique to your preferences. Corporate classes will pay more, but they're a bit more serious, while classes with young kids can be a lot more exciting and energetic if you can handle the chaos and the childcare aspect. Now, this is a fairly simplistic look at all the different types of classes, and in a future video that I've got planned, I'll look in more detail. If you're in the future, you might see the video up there or in the description. What you need to do is find the overlap of the classes that are available to you in your area or your situation and the ones that you want to do. And this is your niche. In my case, I live in a small town and I give classes in person. There isn't much scope for corporate classes here, and I don't enjoy classes with really young children. So my niche is older children, teenagers, and a few adults, giving dynamic classes and conversation. And depending on your situation and preferences, this might be completely different. If you're teaching online, you can check out all of the different platforms and what kind of customer bases they have. Or you can go independent and search for exactly the type of students that you want. Now, you don't have to be exclusive about what kind of classes you take. Obviously, you can branch out and do different things, but I do recommend specialising in 1 or 2 areas so you can really own that niche. You'll find ways of connecting with that kind of student and really just getting better at what you do a lot faster. Tip number 2 is charge enough. This applies mostly to online teaching, but it can also apply to in-person classes where you're in a really saturated market. Now, it's tempting to undercut all of the other tutors so you get all of the students first. But avoid doing this. You won't make enough money for it to be worthwhile, and plus your fee kind of reflects your quality. If you're the cheapest tutor going, people will assume you're also the lowest quality, and you might end up attracting the kind of students who aren't really committed to their learning. Instead, market yourself and your services really well. Display how competent and approachable you are and how you're going to fulfill your customers' needs. Be patient at first and make sure you're delivering high quality classes, and your students will be happy to pay the price that you're charging. And if you're working for an online company that finds you classes, make sure you're getting paid enough. Some of the companies these days just pay so little, and you could be doing better elsewhere or independent. Sure, it might reduce how many classes you get for a short time, but in the long run you'll be getting paid more by the hour. Tip number 3, consider travel and preparation time. Not all private classes are equal in the time and effort you have to put in, and I'll show you what I mean. Imagine I have 2 prospective students, Alvaro and Berta. Alvaro lives 5 minutes down the road and he wants conversation classes. Berta lives half an hour away on the metro and she wants intense exam preparation. Will these 2 classes earn me the same amount of money? No, I'd go for Alvaro every time. Think about it, that half an hour of travel to get there and half an hour back, so that's an hour in total, is time you could be teaching and earning. And not to mention you probably have to pay metro or bus fares to get there. Also, you'll probably end up spending a lot more time preparing an intense exam preparation class than you would a conversation class. So before accepting every student that approaches you, even if it's your first one and you really want to get started, think about if it's the right class for you. And if it's not, be patient. You will get more that are better. Tip 4, and this is my favourite tip, teach small groups for higher rates. You can earn more money by teaching a small group than you can with individuals, and it actually works out better value for your students as well. Let's say you charge $25 for a single student for a 1-hour class. That's a good amount of money to be earning per hour, but it's a lot of money for an individual student to pay, and in most countries it's too much. Now let's say you teach 3 students and charge them $10 an hour. They each get good value because it's only $10, and you get a whole $30, which is more than with an individual. So everyone's happy. This idea doesn't work with larger groups though. I'd say 6 or more, and each student isn't getting enough attention, and that kind of undermines the whole point of a private class. Plus, it can be quite difficult to find a location to fit everyone. Usually you do these in-person classes in somebody's house, and there's not always that much space, and if it's online, then teaching that many students at one time is very difficult to manage. Most of the groups that I teach are between 2 and 4. Yes, I teach a few individuals who are happy to pay the money, but most of them, they get better value and I get paid more with a small group. Tip number 5, be clear and consistent with cancellation and payment policies. This is really important if you want to get the money that you've earned. If you're working for an online platform or agency, then this tip doesn't really apply to you. It's for the people who are self-employed who have to manage their own affairs. When you start a new class, tell them your cancellation and payment policy straight away. If you don't know what those are yet, then consider following my method. Payments are done in advance. This is usually done monthly, depending on how many classes there'll be that month, or there can be a set number of classes like 6 where they pay for them, and then when they're done, then they pay for the next 6. For me, if they pay me 12 classes, I give them a 13th free. This means I have the security of getting paid, and they get an extra class. Everyone's a winner. As for cancellations, my policy is pretty clear. If they cancel on the day of the class, then I will charge them for that day. However, if I cancel, or if they cancel the day before, then they don't have to pay. They can either get refunded, or I'll just deduct one of the classes from the next payment. This system works well for me, and I haven't had any complaints. But just having a good system in place isn't enough. You need to be consistent with applying it. Don't let students come up with excuses and say, oh, I'll pay you next time or whatever, because that's a slippery slope. If you allow it once, they'll do it again and again and again. If you're finding this video helpful, please hit the like button to show me that you're enjoying it and that you get lots of benefits from it. Alright, let's go on to the next 5 tips all about making your classes amazing. Tip number 6 is do a needs analysis. A needs analysis is where you figure out the strengths, the weaknesses, the preferences, the interests, and the goals of your students. To deliver the best classes, you need to know how your students learn best and what they need to know. Ideally, you should do this in the first class, with some specific activities for getting to know them as people and for understanding what their level of English is. In the description below, I've put a link to my website where I go into detail about how to do a needs analysis, and there are also some lesson plans that you can use with your first session with a new group. The needs analysis is the first part, but really you should be constantly learning about how your students react to different things and what they need. This informs your planning so you can adjust your classes and tailor them specifically for their needs. Tip number 7 is to develop rapport and a friendly atmosphere. Students learn best when they're feeling comfortable. Creating a friendly, safe atmosphere from the beginning is key. There are a few great ways of doing this. First, smile and encourage. Second, don't overcorrect, especially not in the beginning. Third, don't mock or criticize mistakes, support them instead. Fourth, get the other students in your group to do the same, so you create respect and kind of mutual encouragement. And fifth, keep the pressure low. Each student has their own personality, so you need to adapt to suit the classes to them. Some students need you to lead everything, while others enjoy being more independent and directing things themselves. Developing rapport is another way of making students feel comfortable. Find connections and mutual interests and develop them. No matter who your student is, you'll find something in common with them, and you can use that to hook them into the class and make them feel comfortable, interested and engaged in your amazing classes. Now, if students are of a similar age to you and you find you have a lot of things in common, your relationship might develop beyond just professional and you might become friends. In general, I think this is fine. It's good to make connections and new friends, especially if you're living in another country, you can experience a different culture. But make sure to be professional during the classes at all time. They're paying you to teach them English, not to be their buddy. Tip number 8, create bespoke lesson plans or at least adjust pre-made ones, specific to your students. Once you've got to know your students' needs and abilities, the real fun begins. This is creating classes that specifically target those needs in an engaging context that make it amazing for them. I plan all my classes from the bottom up, but that doesn't mean I design every activity every time. I have a bank of games and activities and things that I like to do that I pull from. At first that might seem a little bit overwhelming, so you can take a pre-made lesson plan and customize it to suit your students' needs. That grammar lesson about the present continuous, could you change the example sentence to be about something that they enjoy, like a film that they like? Is that game a little bit easy and simplistic that your students might get bored with it? Well, add a rule and change some things up so it's more exciting. Now, you'll make mistakes when you're doing this. I do it as well, especially with new classes when you haven't quite figured out what they need and what they like yet. Things don't go according to plan, but instead of feeling bad about that, you use that information to calibrate future classes. You should be constantly learning and adapting and moulding things for their benefit. Tip number 9, be flexible with homework. Now, I don't usually set homework because I think students have enough to do with school and work, and chances are they're not going to hand in my homework on time. When I do set homework, I make sure it's relevant and/or interesting. Just giving out worksheets and boring exercises is not fun for them. Sometimes it's good to get them to do some creative writing and longer essays that you don't really want to do in class, but don't do that too much. It's better to give projects and fun activities that they can be doing at home. Preparing a mini presentation on something they're passionate about, watching a TV show in English, or playing narrative telephone are all really fun options. On my website, I've written an article about 9 amazing homework things that you could do, so find that in the description. Tip number 10, and the final tip, is to bring positive energy. Now, this may seem wishy-washy or insignificant, but it's actually really important. No matter what the classes are, you can apply this and it will elevate all of your lessons just that little bit more. Start every class with a smile and a cheerful greeting. No matter how you're feeling, if you're feeling sick, if you're feeling tired, if you just don't want to be there, don't let your mood detract from the quality of the session. Like in many jobs, you're paid to put on a brave face and pretend to be positive. Your students shouldn't have to deal with the negative emotions you're bringing. On the flip side, don't be so excitable and positive that it comes across false. Some people are just naturally energetic and enthusiastic, but if you're a person who's more reserved, you don't have to force that. Each teacher has their own style. I found that when I'm not feeling great, I just get stuck in and I forget about all of those things, and I start to enjoy myself. And that's what tutoring is all about. It's about sharing a wonderful learning experience. Talking of sharing, if you have any good tutor tips, put them in the comments so everybody else can read them and learn more and become better. Now, there's plenty more to private tutoring than just the 10 tips I've covered in this list, so make sure to subscribe. Not only do I do tutoring tips, I do games, activities, role plays, vocabulary, everything to do with teaching English. And don't forget to check out the description for the links to my website for those articles that I mentioned earlier. But for now, I've been Will from Enchanted ESL, wishing you all the joy and success in your teaching. See ya!